What's going on, everyone? This is BZ Watchdog News Network, where we do not take government press releases at face value. We do not clap because a public official says the words family and God, and we sure as hell do not confuse excuses with accountability. So before we get into this one, smash that like button, drop a comment or two, share this everywhere, and subscribe to the channel. Because tonight, we are going back to Hubbard, Texas. And last week, y'all heard that nearly hour-long phone call with Jason Patrick himself, the chief of police and city administrator, doing what public officials do when the spotlight gets a little too bright, talking in circles, denying some things, explaining away others, and trying to wrap himself in, I'm a family man, and I'm a God-fearing man, as if that answers the actual allegations. It doesn't. Nobody accused him of failing Sunday school. The questions are about public office, public trust, public money, hiring practices, and possible misconduct. And tonight, we are moving past the speeches and into the pattern. Because when you start looking at Jason Patrick's career timeline, when you start looking at Hubbard PD hiring, when you start looking at who lands there, who stays there, who leaves there, and what TCOLE had to say about compliance, this stops looking like random coincidence and starts looking like a department that raises a whole lot of questions. And to be clear right up front, where something is confirmed by records, I'm going to tell you. Where something is still rumor, allegation, or a line of inquiry, I'm going to tell you that too. That is called journalism. That is called fairness. And apparently in Hubbard, that is also called a problem. Chapter 1, last week's phone call, smoke, screens, and self-serving deflections. So let's start with that phone call, because Jason Patrick spent a lot of time trying to shape the narrative. He wanted to paint himself as the victim. He wanted to talk about retaliation. He wanted to explain away his past. He wanted to lean on character branding. But what he did not do was erase the timeline. And that matters, because when a public official is confronted with serious questions and their first move is not, here are the records, but instead, I'm a good man, that should make every taxpayer sit up straight. Being a family man is not a defense to allegations. Being God-fearing is not a substitute for documentation. And being emotional on the phone is not the same thing as being truthful. So I want you all to remember that as we move into the actual record trail, because the issue here is not whether Jason Patrick can sound sincere. The issue is whether the facts hold up. Chapter 2. Jason Patrick's career timeline and the 2012 problem. Now let's talk about Jason Patrick's law enforcement timeline. According to the TCOLE license service report image here, Patrick's service history shows him at Hill County Sheriff's Office through April 2nd of 2012, and then back at Hubbard Police Department beginning July 3rd of 2012. His peace officer license is shown as active in that report. That timeline is why people have questions, because Jason says he was retaliated against by former Sheriff Jeff Lyon. Jason says he was given a dishonorable discharge. Jason says he was not really terminated in the ordinary sense. But let's be real clear. If your separation status is serious enough to block your ability to continue working in law enforcement, then the public has a right to ask how you were back in uniform just a few months later. And according to your account, the settlement changing that discharge to honorable did not happen until December 2012. So that leaves a very obvious public interest question. How did Jason Patrick land at Hubbard PD on July 3rd of 2012 if the status issue was not corrected until December? That is not me declaring guilt. That is not me inventing drama. That is the timeline raising its own questions. And in Hubbard, the timeline keeps talking. Chapter 3, TCOLE compliance. Hubbard didn't submit required policies on time. Now let's move from allegations to something that is documented. I uploaded a TCOLE report here tied to Hubbard Police Department and Jason Patrick. The investigative summary states that the agency failed to submit required model policies on hiring, misconduct, and personnel files by June 1st of 2025. It further states that the agency was formally notified on September 3rd of 25, and that the policies were ultimately submitted on September 5th, 2025. That report was listed as administratively closed afterward, And the attached email in that same file shows TCOLE investigator Joseph Nichols telling Patrick he could not locate Hubbard's misconduct, hiring, and personnel file policies, and Patrick replying on September 5th that Hubbard had reviewed and accepted the model policies into its SOP. Now think about that for a minute. A police department without timely submitted policies on hiring, misconduct, and personnel files. Oh, fantastic. What could possibly go wrong? You mean the three things the department absolutely should have nailed down before hiring officers, managing discipline, and maintaining personnel accountability. But sure, everybody calm down. I'm sure it was just a tiny paperwork issue in the same way the Titanic had a tiny water issue. And this matters because Hubbard PD is not some abstract agency on paper. These are real officers, real arrests, real citizens, real consequences. If the department was late on required policies dealing with hiring and misconduct, then the public has every right to ask whether Hubbard's hiring culture has been sloppy, reckless, or worse. Chapter 4. The Hubbard roster. Why does this department keep raising red flags? Now let's look at the roster I laid out. Based on the LSR images I uploaded, Hubbard has employed or currently employs a number of officers whose service histories show movement through multiple agencies, including Jason Patrick, multiple Hubbard and Hill County entries over the years. Zachary R. Spigener, Hillsborough PD, Hill County Sheriff's Office, then Hubbard PD from May 21st of 2021 until today. Joshua W. Sexton, Hubbard PD from December 2nd, 25 to today, after other agencies including West, Ennis, Covington, and Waco ISD. John W. Bailes, multiple prior agencies and Hubbard entries, including current Hubbard service from September 25th of 2023 until today. Brian Bell, Hubbard PD from January 11th of 24 to today, after Mejia and Navarro County Sheriff's Office. Matthew B. Cosper, Hubbard PD from May 5th, 2025 to today, after West, Riesel, Mart, and Texas Juvenile Justice. Anthony C. Daniels, Hubbard PD from August 27th to 2025 to today, after Riesel, Tarrant County, Constable Precinct 2, Mart, and Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Myra F. Gonzalez, Hubbard PD from July 16th, 2024 to today, with prior La Vega ISD PD and earlier Hubbard service. Justin L. Graham, Hubbard PD services show continuously from April 3rd, 2015 until today. Now let me be careful here. Working at multiple agencies does not by itself prove misconduct. It does not automatically mean someone is dirty. It does not automatically mean Hubbard hired bad officers. But what it does mean is this. When you already have public concerns about the chief, when you already have a documented TCOLE compliance issue involving hiring and misconduct policies, when you already have a small town department with repeated questions about personnel choices, then those service histories become part of a bigger picture. And that bigger picture deserves scrutiny. Because sometimes the department looks less like a professional agency and more like a misfit island with badges. Chapter 5. John Bailes, Rumors, and Why Personnel Files Matter. Now let's talk about John Bailes. His LSR shows a long law enforcement history with Hubbard, Wortham, Itasca, Mejia, and he is currently back at Hubbard PD. I said I personally had a run-in with John Bailes, and I've heard stories from his past that match rumors about his demeanor and conduct. Now again, I'm not going to state rumors as fact. That is not how this works. But I am going to say this. When a department keeps people on staff who generate recurring concern from members of the public, and when those concerns line up with the need for strong misconduct policy, strong supervision, and strong documentation, then the obvious question becomes, what is in the personnel files? What complaints were made? What write-ups exist? What reprimands exist? What counseling memos exist? What internal investigations exist? And that is exactly why Hubbard's late submission of required personnel and misconduct policies is not some harmless clerical footnote. Because if people in that department have a history that needs watching, then policy failures matter even more. Chapter 6, Theodore Monthey, another name that demands questions. Here we have former Hubbard police officer Theodore Dwayne Monthey. Based on his TCOLE history, Monthey had several service periods with Hubbard PD across many years, including stretches from 2013 through 2025, with prior time at Mart PD and Frost PD. He was arrested in Bell County in 2023 on a controlled substance charge, seen here with mugshot and charge information. He was later terminated by the city of Hubbard in 2025. If this record is accurate, then it raises another obvious question. Why does Hubbard PD keep ending up connected to names that generate this kind of concern? And if an officer with that kind of baggage worked there for years, the public deserves to know. Was Hubbard aware? Were there prior warning signs? Were there complaints? Were there internal issues before the arrest ever happened? This is not reckless speculation. That is exactly the kind of question taxpayers should be asking any department that expects blind trust. Chapter 7, Zachary Spigener and the theft question nobody wants to touch. Now let's get to another uncomfortable question. According to the LSR image here, Zachary Spigener has been with Hubbard Police Department since May 21st, 2021 and remains there today. Before that, he was with Hill County Sheriff's Office and Hubbard PD. His wife, Krista Spigener, was terminated and prosecuted for theft, and former officer Theodore Monthey was terminated shortly after that. Now, I want to be careful. A spouse's alleged or proven misconduct does not automatically make the other spouse guilty of anything. That would be irresponsible to claim. But it absolutely does create a legitimate public interest question when the spouse of a city employee convicted or prosecuted over theft remains employed in a sensitive law enforcement role in the same small town environment where public trust is already under strain. So the question is not, did Zachary do what Krista did? The question is, what did he know? When did he know it? And was there any overlap, conflict, benefit, concealment, or reporting failure tied to city operations? Maybe none, maybe some. But the public has a right to ask. And once again, when the same department already has documented problems tied to hiring and misconduct policy compliance, the need for transparency gets even stronger. Chapter 8, Nepotism, Small Town Networks, and the Bailes-Lynch rumor. Then there is the rumor that Colin Lynch may be related to John Bailes, who is married to Darla Bailes, the woman seen in that city council video that went viral. Now, as of this video, I'm not presenting that family relationship as established fact. That part still needs to be independently verified. But the reason it matters is because in a town like Hubbard, the problem is often not just one bad decision. It is the network. Who is related to who? Who hires who? Who protects who? Who gets looked at? Who gets ignored? Who gets disciplined? Who gets quietly moved? Who gets one more chance? And who gets buried? This is how small town power works when nobody is willing to ask hard questions. And around here, we ask them. Chapter 9, First Job Cops or Last Chance Cops. Some of these officers may have come to Hubbard as either their first real opportunity or as a place they landed after trouble elsewhere. Now again, not every young or newer officer is unqualified. Not every agency change means misconduct. Not every small town officer is a problem. But if Hubbard is becoming the place where questionable hires get recycled, rehabilitated, or hidden in plain sight, then that is a problem for every person who gets pulled over, arrested, searched, questioned, or jailed by that department. Because bad culture is contagious. You do not fix shaky leadership by stacking it with officers who learned under shaky leadership. You do not clean up poor hiring by hiring people into poor supervision. And you do not restore trust by telling the public to stop noticing patterns. So let's recap what we actually have. We have Jason Patrick's own public employment timeline raising questions about how he returned to law enforcement so quickly in 2012. We have a documented TCOLE report stating Hubbard PD failed to timely submit required policies on hiring, misconduct, and personnel files, and only submitted them after being notified in September 2025. We have a Hubbard roster with multiple officers whose history deserve deeper review, including John Bailes, Zachary Spigener, Joshua Sexton, Brian Bell, Matthew Cosper, Anthony Daniels, Myra Gonzalez, and Justin Graham. We have unresolved public questions about personnel quality, supervision, write-ups, reprimands, nepotism, and whether Hubbard PD has become a landing spot for officers who should have gotten more scrutiny than they did. And we have one central theme tying all of it together. The people enforcing the law in Hubbard need to be held to the law, the records, and the timeline, not to a lower standard because they know how to talk. So no, this investigation is not over. Not even close. Because the deeper we dig into Hubbard, the more this starts looking like a city where the same names, the same excuses, and the same smoke screens keep floating back to the surface. And that is why we are going to keep pulling records. We are going to keep examining personnel histories. We're going to keep asking about complaints, reprimands, internal affairs files, hiring packets, and disciplinary records. And we are going to keep separating what is rumor from what is documented, because that is how real accountability works. Not with slogans, not with church talk, not with trust me, and not with some polished little town image that falls apart the second somebody starts reading the paperwork. So y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Does this look like a department built on professionalism, or does it look like a department with way too many questions and not nearly enough answers? Before we go, smash that like button, drop a comment and tell me what you thought. Share this everywhere and subscribe to the channel. This is BZ Watchdog News Network, and in Hubbard, Texas, the records are talking, the timeline is talking, and the people in power may not like what comes out next. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I'll see you in the next video.
Tyranny, corruption, extortion.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
BZ Watchdog News Network. BZ Watchdog.